Rahman Rahim. And today we're going to continue, inshallah. And here it is, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ. Of course, last time we talked about the parts about the surah right there when we talked about what Ahl al-Kitab were replacing, and specifically the Yahud, and what they were replacing in terms of instead of working or instead of taking. There's a word that we really have to keep in mind all the time. That word is epistemology. So what does that word really mean? You see, when we actually talk about knowledge, one very important thing is that we always have to figure out what makes knowledge, what brings knowledge, what is the resource for knowledge. That's the word epistemology. I don't use it, at least in that term too often, because many times people get confused using these words and they get lost in jargons. But this is the thing, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was exposing here that there were certain things that the Yahud were using as the tool for their knowledge, as the resource, and they were actually replacing the resource of deen, the resource for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knowing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And instead of using the wahi, instead of using Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's resources, they were using whether they were using their own hawa, their own inclination, or they were using sihr, manipulation, whether that was oral manipulation or whether that was a behavioral manipulation. In the end, they weren't necessarily concerned about haqq as much as they were concerned about getting some political gain, some authority, some money, some dunya gain. Now, here's the thing, is that they continued in many different ways, putting in the claims of why it is necessary for them to reject the Prophet ﷺ, and that different ayat were responding that, hey, you had throughout your history rejected the Prophet ﷺ in the event 1, event 2, event 3, and then it continues to respond to their claims. Now, one thing, all right, is that this ayah, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ. The word nansakh, this is Surah Al-Baqarah. Yep. So the word nansakh actually means to abrogate. All right. Now, when you look at the word nansakh, there is another qira'ah, nunsikh. All right. So what's the difference? Well, nansakh can mean to abrogate. And what does abrogate really mean? Well, there are actually several meanings to the word nansakh. Nansakh can mean to take or to abrogate, meaning to wipe away the old ruling and to bring in a new ruling. Or it can also mean to bring in a new ruling to a ruling that was not there. It could also mean that this is adding to a new ruling or to the old ruling, or it can mean to be specific in a certain ruling. There are so many different things when we're talking about in naskh. This actually involves a number of different things that we actually have to see. Why does it even talk about that part after all? Well, the reason for that is because the Yahud had actually claimed that there was a divine alteration in the rulings. So what does that actually mean? The Yahud claimed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first put in a ruling and then he recognized that he was wrong about it. So he changed it with a new ruling. This is the Jewish claim. In Islam, this is absolutely absurd. Why? Because Allah Almighty knows beyond time and place. And to actually think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow just recognized that he was at fault and that he was wrong is actually contradicting to who and what God is. Are you guys with me here?
Yeah.
Why? Because a God is supposed to know the past and the future. So there's absolutely no way that Allah Almighty would all of a sudden just recognize that he was wrong in a ruling. So why did rulings change in Islam at certain points? Let's give an example. One of the examples is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beginning, drinking alcohol was permissible. Yes, sir.
I got another story.
Go ahead.
First, for Allah to abrogate it, he has to, if he said it's haram at first, they wouldn't be able to do it. So for him to do it, he had to do it step by step. So first he said, check was law drunk, and then slowly, once he got used to it, he can't be drunk during Salah. So that would mean during this time, almost lunch time, so I can't drink, right? So then, like, probably the only time you can drink is like Isha time. And then now they're getting more used to it, and then finally once they get used to it, Allah abrogated it, and then once Allah abrogated it, now they're already used to it, and then during that time when Allah abrogated it, was drinking beer at that time, and he did, in Medina, there was Mecca, there was beer spilled all over the streets.
Right. This is Sheikh Saad. This is our future Sheikh. Good job, Saad. So there were a number of different things that were actually abrogated in where there was a certain ruling, and then later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there could be a ruling that totally changed. Like an example, a ruling that totally changed, like the khamr, in where in the beginning, the khamr was permissible. And then the ayah was revealed in where it indicated that it wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the best of the different risks that people would have. And then finally, the ayah revealed that it is totally impermissible to drink. Of course, in the second time, they were only allowed to drink it throughout the day. Now, that was not the only thing. All right, that wasn't the only thing. Same thing with hijab, with the way women cover. Same thing when we're talking about adoption, child adoption. Same thing when we're talking about zina and the rulings of zina. So many different things. They actually went through a process of growing and gradually growing in understanding Islam and how they apply it. So it wasn't everything revealed at once like that. Even when it came to hudud, criminal law, a lot of different changes did actually happen. Now, here's one thing, is that if the case was not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just discovered that it was wrong, what was the point really relating to? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers this question, or answers in response to the Yahud. Why respond to the Yahud? Because the Yahud were actually believing in something called al-bada'. Al-bada', which is when they consider that God just had that alteration and that he wanted to change the ruling because he felt that he was wrong after all. All right. So here, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ, that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he abrogates an ayah, أَوْ نُنْسِهَا, or whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala نُنْسِهَا, I want you to look at the word نُنْسِهَا, because there is another qira'ah, نَنْسَأْهَا, نَنْسَأْهَا. What is the difference? نَنْسَأْهَا was different than نُنْسِهَا, because نُنْسِهَا would mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make you forget it. It becomes forgotten. But here's one thing. When we're talking about abrogation, this does not relate to aqeedah. All right. What does that mean? That means that the aqidah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent from Adam alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was all one aqidah. There was no change in aqidah. Abrogation does not involve aqidah whatsoever because the aqidah of La ilaha illallah was always one. The abrogation only involves legislature. Only involves legislature. So what about nunsiha? Well, the different rulings, some of them, the legislature was indeed forgotten. Like what? How much do we know about the legislature of Prophet Musa alayhi salam? Do we know much about the legislature of Prophet Musa? We don't know much about the legislature of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Let's go Prophet Nuh. What do you know about Prophet Nuh legislature and that? We don't know. How much do you know about the legislature that was revealed onto Prophet Shu'aib? You really don't know anything. We don't know anything about it. What happened? It was forgotten, but that was for a hikmah. It wasn't that it was forgotten because it was not good anymore. It was forgotten because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced it with another legislature. So you don't have to try to go into different archaeologies and try to find out, well, we need to know what Prophet Nuh alayhi salam's legislature was like. Anyways, even if you knew what Prophet Nuh's legislature was, you don't have to follow it because the legislature was abrogated. It went through naskh by the coming deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the coming deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Islam. Go ahead.
Can we say, because you know how the Quran says 25 prophets, right?
Right.
But can we say because all the other prophets, because we don't have a history, because that was Jahiliyyah. That was
No, wait a minute. So the Jahiliyyah would be the action that is away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions. All right. So the Sharia that was revealed onto Prophet Isa alayhi salam cannot be regarded as Jahiliyyah. All right. So not everything that is pre-prophetic or before the Prophet ﷺ is Jahiliyyah. And that's why the ayah was continuing, نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. So here's a question. Which Sharia is better, the before or the later one? Some, it can actually be on the same level of goodness. Why? Because the ayah says we would bring something better. In other words, a new legislature that is better, or even on the same level of how good it is. All right? Of how good it is. So when you look at ما ننسخ من آية, it's really important to recognize that there are different things relating to Sharia that indeed with time they had actually been changed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purposely in order to, one, help people grow in their ability to apply, two, gradually help people embrace haqq without having all those hardships, reduce the harm that they might find. Four, even when they cannot recognize why, here's one thing. Why do I have to wear hijab? Why do I have to lower my gaze? Why do I have to pray 4 rak'ahs? Why is zina haram? Why is drinking haram? All these different things, we don't necessarily know the ruling and the reason behind the ruling. We don't necessarily know the reasons behind every ruling, all right? We don't know the reason behind every ruling. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us right there, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. What is that supposed to mean? In a nutshell, do you not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of doing everything. I'm going to get to what this means in just a bit. All right. Two, Alam ta'lam, do you not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the complete ownership and the absolute ownership for the heavens and the earth? And you would have no power and you would have no support without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here's one thing. Is that, what is that really inferring? What is that really inferring? Now, a number of different things. When it comes to Sharia, there are different stages of understanding Sharia. That is called fiqh. Sheikh Saad, pay attention, my friend. You know what? Get closer to me. Get closer to me. You're my special friend. Don't worry, my husband doesn't mind. You're young.
But it's like too many wise, it's not good sometimes.
Too much, being too wise is not good?
Like, you know how, like,
oh, too many why?
Yeah, like, why this is like
Asking too many questions.
No, like, you know how in the Quran.
Let me answer that one. Hold on, we're going to get to that. Now, here are a number of different things. Some of the things we can know the ruling as to why this is the case. Some of the different evidences that we have, the nas, the text might tell us, well, why is it good? Why is it bad? Why should you do this? For example, look at the ayah. When it actually orders women to dress modestly, what does it say? ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. It just said, this is so that they would be recognized, فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ, so that they won't be harmed. Recognized with what? Recognize that they're women of identity, my friend. They're recognized that they're women of principle. Recognize when those guys see them on the street, they recognize these girls ain't girls for messing with. You're just messing with the wrong person. I'll tell you guys a story. I used to go to a public high school. Yeah, I used to go to public high school. Look at those boys looking at me like, hey, yeah. I used to go to public high school. All right. Now, I used to dress pretty much like you, not like you, but like you. When I used to go, I just loved the way Somalis dress. And when I was in high school, I went to Irondale, just not far from here. All right. And I remember going out of my school, time to go for my school bus. All right. Going to my school bus. And did I get bullied? Well, hold on a second. All right, a guy comes out, or gets his head out from the school, one of the school buses, and says, hey, can I have your phone number? Wallahi al-azim, I didn't even know how to respond. My tongue said by itself, do you want to know anything about Islam? And he said, no, thanks. And he just sat down. I didn't even think about the response. So don't think that I was smart in answering. That was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He just sat down. Here's the thing, is that when you walk, when you talk with principle, people are able to recognize that you are a person to mess with, or you're a person to not mess with. So the ayah was telling ذَلِكَ أَدْنَىٰ أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. This is an identity that you wear. Same thing, hold on to it. Same thing when we're talking about piercing, for example, or when we're talking about a certain attire. Even for men, so I know you don't wear hijab, Saad, all right? Even for men, there's a certain attire. Let's say, for example, you see a sheikh, and you're seeing this sheikh taking his I don't know, his trousers, taking them down and walking, with his clothes going down, and half of his underwear is showing, and well, I don't know what they call them. That sagging, okay, sagging, and all right. How are you going to look into it? You would right away consider that this person is not a person of principle. You don't treat them with honor.
So when you said the eye was recognition, so that they're recognized. So the woman that's wearing hijab, every guy respects her and gets away from her. And versus, okay, you were in high school, right? The girl that was wearing the mini skirt that's showing the belly. You know, every kid, all the kids are like, they whistle at her, but honestly, nobody like wanted to claim her,
Right.
even though they want to look at her like that. Oh, you know, is she her girlfriend? No, her? No. The worst guy would be like, no, she's not my girlfriend. Because
Right.
the way she's dressed. But then when he looks at her like he's
Yeah.
gonna, you know, make a gesture and whistle and they that whistle they make all of them. And when she's walking, everybody's looking and like making all these
It's
noises.
it's
hitting on her.
basically just announcing a principle. So here's the thing, is that like we said, that particular part of an ayah was telling me, well, here's why. But not every single legislature or rule in the Quran explains to me why. But the faqih, a person that is trained in fiqh, what does that mean? A person that is trained in Islamic law is capable of going deeper than the surface and trying to decipher the different patterns and the different reasons of why an ayah, or what they're called legal maxims. So what does that actually mean? Listen up, Sa'd and Rashid. Something is called maqasid al-sharia, or legal maxims. There are certain things that we can know what the ruling and why that ruling is halal or haram, but there are other rulings that we can learn by deciphering the different patterns in Islam, looking at the Quran and Sunnah, and we could see a pattern of what the rules are based on. In general, the rules are based on 5 different matters. Number 1, it is based on your intention. 2, in other words, number 1, intention takes a very big center in how we judge your behavior.
Saad did that.
2, yep, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. 2, yep, 2, when we're looking at intentions, that's number 1. Number 2 is that we also look at the matters that you want to stay away from harm. So everything in Sharia is all about turning away and avoiding harm. Whether that harm, Saad, you guys, you should be, you know what, let's do this, okay? We're going to do this and hopefully you guys can see it, okay? So let's do it so you guys can see it, because when we're talking about nasikh, I want you guys to be able to understand, well, why? And people are always like, what's the ruling on this and what's the ruling on that? And then they would expect an answer to be so simple and so fast, all right? So we're going to look at it right there. So in general, okay, we're looking at, in general, in Sharia, there is supposed to be 1, avoiding harm. We're avoiding harm. Let's actually share the screen for those that are actually there. Let's do it right there. All right. So when we're talking about Sharia is based on avoiding harm or bringing in good, or it's about even bringing good. It could be bringing good now, or even in the long run, or avoiding harm in the long run. In other words, later on, you may not recognize how this is bringing you good. The other thing is that it is all الشريعة مصلحة كلها. Everything in Sharia is all about human benefit, not only human. So human benefit is supposed to be our main concern, but there's also the other benefit when we're talking about the individual. All right. And then there's also the society. So who do we actually consider first? We first consider the society before the individual. So we put the society first in order to consider before we even say for personal freedom. So what does that mean? Let's say hijab. Yeah, it's personal freedom. Let her dress the way she wants. But here's one thing. We look at the society and the protection for the society to make sure that the majority of women and the majority of men are actually doing the right thing. They're able to tame their behavior to go the right direction. So we would say, ladies, I know that some of you individually might want to dress the way you want, but because the society and the protection and preserving the society and preserving
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
that's okay.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله
مسجد الرحيم.
حي على السلام حي على السلام حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
I think they're going to take a while. So when, and just until they start. All right. So when we look at Sharia, all right, we look at one society coming first and then the individual. So not always do we consider that, oh, we need to make sure that we give people the freedom. We have to put in a number of different considerations. Number one,
Is it up to us to give them freedom? Isn't that,
that's not,
since-
here's the thing. Well, because in Islam, when you look at tashri' in general, legislature is not based on you or I, it's actually based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if legislature was going to be based on you and I or any other theory, it's all going to be affected and influenced by probably male or female, probably your interests in what you want, probably what would be good for your probably business or whatever it is. So that's why in Islam that Sharia legislating or legislation in general is supposed to be beyond human. It's supposed to be, it's based on Quran and Sunnah. But here are a number of different things. Can you get Saad? He has to be here. So when, what?
They're praying, I think it's making something.
I don't know. All right. So when you look at Sharia in general, we've got a number of different things. We've got إنما الأعمال بالنيات. So الأمور بمقاصدها. So there are certain what is called the general قواعد الفقهية. So they're general things that we would, by looking at the rulings in Islam, we're able to get a pattern of what is the whole halal haram legislature. What is it actually based on? Number one, consideration of nawaya, consideration of niyyah, consideration of intention. Number two, la darar wa la dirar, that no harm, whether on the society or on the individual, is to be afflicted whatsoever. Number three is that al-adatu, well, before that, that whenever al-mashaqqa tajlibu at-taysir, whenever there is a hardship, there is going to be ease. In other words, don't think that, oh, this is going to be hard to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, whenever there's a hardship, there is going to be an ease coming in with it, not only in your life, but the hardship. So let's say, for example, you're finding it hard to make wudu because of wounds. There is tayammum. Let's say you're finding it hard to get to, certain rulings. There's going to be an alternative. Now, the other thing is that when we look at the different rulings right there, you're also looking at one very important part of it, which is al-'adatu muhakkima or muhakkama. What does that mean? Not everything did Islam necessarily come to change everything that you had known about your own culture. Even your culture can actually be a base to help you move on in terms of making your life easier on a condition. You can't say, well, this is my culture and this is how I base it on. So that's why the scholars of fiqh will actually go and look at those different areas and say, when do we consider culture? It is on a condition that there is, and this is really important, that there is no text that contradicts that ruling. So whenever there is no text that contradicts that culture, that's when we would say, we'll consider and take the ruling within your culture. So what is this all about anyways? How do we actually look into that? Well, you want to look at it's always based on al-yaqeen la yazulu bishak. La yazulu bishak. That we always base things based on things that we already are not in doubt of. In other words, we base things based on what we are certain of over doubt. We consider certainty over doubt. What is that all supposed to do with anything within legislature? Legislature in Islam is always based on the protection for these following things. Your own deen. People's deen actually means considering and putting the priority and prioritizing people's vision of Tawheed, and how they see the world through the lens of Quran and not through their own lens. 2, the preservation of people's lives, whether the individual life or whether the community life. Number 3, the consideration of people's minds, whether we're talking about health, mind health, whether it's talking about, abstaining from drinking or alcohol, drugs, etc., and also mental health. If it's causing you depression, we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a conversation. If this is causing anxiety, we need to work on another conversation. And then, of course, Islam and Quran and the society is telling you, well, don't engage, for example, in haram zina acts. Well, that's because it's all about protecting al-ird. It's protecting the chastity. What does chastity even have to do with anything? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to protect the chastity because of how sacred family is. Because family is sacred. Why is family sacred? Why does it have to be sacred? Because your life and your rights are sacred. And because your rights are sacred, we got to make sure that any type of even the foundation, even if that meant before you are even born, if anybody transgresses the limit and goes deep and attempts to harm your right, even if it was your own mother and father, they're going to be accountable. Who intervenes in that situation? The law will intervene. Why? Because when we're looking at the whole world, there are different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in the world, in nature, to bring about stability. Anybody changing the pattern, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world in, is actually attacking humanity, attacking the nature, attacking the individuals, and attacking all of the people. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever kills one soul, it is as if they had killed all mankind. Why was it actually talking about all mankind? It was in order to emphasize that people's rights and individual rights are all sacred regarding each and every single one of these. It is completely sacred, whether that meant people's lives, or whether that meant the mind, or whether that meant the chastity, or even farther, the mal and their property and their wealth. So how do we actually look into the property and wealth? Well, how the money is coming in, how the money is spent, and of course, how you consider the priorities and the different, and the management in considering how money is spent and where it's going. Why? Because the society's justice, putting in social justice, is impossible unless you maintain these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within your nature, within the nature in general.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah. Qad qamatis salah.
Exactly what I'm trying to explain. When we talk about Islamic legislature, so to come back, when we talk about Islamic legislature, and the reason why we're actually talking about this is really in order to get to one very important point, which is why was there anyways an abrogation, or why were there certain rulings that changed over time, whether from the time of Prophet Nuh, or from our time, or even from, or even we might even consider some of the rulings. For example, when we're talking about slavery, this right now, it doesn't exist. Was it something that was there before? It was there before. Was it something that was practiced before? It was there before. But how is it that we were able to say that, well, there is no slavery now? And we would say, well, Islam actually tells you, looking at deciphering what makes the laws, how laws are legislated within Islam, we're seeing that it's actually based on a number of different categories. By studying the categories, some people, like the scholars of fiqh, like the scholars of jurisprudence, they're able to explain to us the reasons behind certain rulings, but not all the rulings. Now, that's why when we're looking at, for example, slavery, let's give an example, okay? When we're looking at slavery, did Islam actually come in order to enforce slavery, to bring slavery, accept slavery? How did it actually look at slavery? Islam actually wanted to end slavery. What is the difference? What is the evidence for that? Well, we can see in the Quran that it was telling us in order to bring about, for example, to bring about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's acceptance for your deeds. You want to free a slave. In order to give up on a certain sin, you want to free a slave. In order to do zakah, free a slave. In order to do, and the different things. Well, for zakah, that's a different story, not free a slave, but there's a sadaqah to free a slave, because it's not masarif zakah. All right. So when we look at the different areas in where Islam had, by looking at these legislatures and by looking at those patterns, we're able to see that Islam's goal was to free and end slavery. So why didn't it end it from the very beginning of it? Why didn't the Prophet ﷺ just say, you got a slave, give up on that slave? And if let's just end slavery and no more slaves from day one. Well, if the Prophet ﷺ was going to do that, you would have had a society that was actually going to be torn, because the ex-slaves were going to end up becoming homeless, no food and no water. So you needed to put in a system. You needed to put in a program that is going to head towards the direction of not only now, but a program that will even continue for other societies, not only the society during the era of the Prophet ﷺ, but even during the future, that if slavery was ever going to come back, that there would be a program that is within Islam in order to end by that program, the inner program within Islam, to bring about the end of slavery, even if it needed to come back, or if it does come back, that there would be a program to give the human rights, to give the humans their freedom, to ensure that there is a society that is concerned about their protection, concerned about the individual protection, and concerned about the society, and concerned to ensure those people's freedoms. So when you look at the different rulings, some of it, now I want you, Saad, focus with me, my friend. Some of the rulings, we know why the ruling is such and such, because the text is telling me why. Some of the rulings, we don't know why, but we can infer the reasons behind the legislature by looking at the reasons why many things are actually legislated in Islam. Whether we're looking at the legislature in Islam was in order to secure people's lives in terms of Social Security, in terms of people's minds and mental health, in terms of people's chastities and the preservation of family, or in terms of preserving people's property and wealth. So when you look at these patterns, you're able to recognize every single ruling in Islam. Not one ruling will go out of these categories. Not one. Not a single ruling in Islam is not related with this. It's all about either keeping harm away, or bringing good in, or bringing in salvation within the society, like to bring them that salvation to secure the community, or number 4, to give you the ability to bring in the focus. Why is focus even important? Well, as a human being, you share and you have commonalities with the different instincts that animals have without you realizing. Your animal side may actually control you to behaving like an animal without you realizing. So Islam comes in and says, you got to tame certain behaviors, because if you don't, you can go farther than the wildness of animals, where with your intelligence, you'll be able to probably make an atomic bomb that can kill millions. A tiger, a lion will kill 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15. But an atomic bomb can kill a whole countries, right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that some of the humans, in hum kal an'ami bal hum adal, some of the humans are like cattle. In fact, they're even worse. A cattle doesn't have aql. A cattle can harm another cattle. It can. A bull, it can harm, especially during certain times of their lifetime. We had a ranch. They can go sometimes. They can sometimes attack you when they're either hungry or it's their mating season. They can really attack you without you realizing. All right?
I have a question.
Yep.
Two-thirds, last week you told us, 2/3 of Sharia is in preventing harm to even
Absolutely.
happen and not creating solutions for problems. How does that 2/3 falls into that? And use an Arabic one.
It's basically when you're looking at bringing good, all right, preventing harm is more important than trying to do what is, than trying to bring in good. All right, the beginning and the most important thing is when you prevent the harm. So in other words, bringing in a solution, all right, to a problem can actually be better for you to keep the problem away than trying to figure out a solution for it.
So the goal is to prevent the problem from even happening.
Exactly. Than trying to
How do
figure
you
out a
call that in
solution.
Arabic?
Isn't Islam king?
How did you call it?
What did I call it in Arabic at the time?
I think you just say 2-3% is I memorized.
Oh, you mean سد الذرائع. سد الذرائع. سد الذرائع. سد الذرائع. It's all 2/3 of Sharia is all about, and it's based on keeping harm away than trying to find solutions to problems. Look at the Me Too issue.
I taught my
All right.
Harama that.
Look at the Me Too issue. All right. They're trying to find solutions for all these women that have been victims, all right, or at least claimed victims. Many of them are really victims, but you have another group that, well, you really got to prove that you're a victim. All right. But in the end is that for sure there are many that are victims. There's no doubt about that. With a society that is based on the craze for, if you look at animals, how many people had farms before? You had farms before? Okay. The two most dangerous times for animals and to be around an animal is during due times. You guys memorize it. When maybe in the future, Saad will start having a farm.
But he said he had a toy.
Toy farm? Okay. All right. The two worst times to be around animals is when they are hungry and during their mating season. When they're hungry and during the mating season. You know what that means? And that's the same thing with human beings. That's the same thing with human beings.
Right.
Same thing with human beings when they're hungry and mating. This is real. This is real. We share it with animals. We share it with animals. That's when they can't cross their boundaries. That's when, hold on. That's when they cross their boundaries. We share it with animals. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did you live on a farm?
My daughter, she gets hungry when she want to eat.
Oh.
She missed the food. She just like, I said, "Ma'am."
There you go. And that's the same thing. And when you look at those two things, Islam is telling you, well, wait a minute. There are certain things must be tamed down in order to put you on the human category. The human category is about learning how to live the principle regardless of the animal side and how strong it is getting into you. And that's what Tazkiyah is all about. Tazkiyah, the training of Tazkiyah is all learning. How do I tame my pain? How do I tame my hunger? The pain of hunger, the pain of wanting and needing, and the pain that is part of our nature, the urge. There's an urge that's part of our nature, the urge to want other people's properties, the urge to get some, the spotlight, the urge to get certain things, whether it's our different sides of our different bodies. So Tazkiyah, which is really in order to live the principle, that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually sent us the Quran and sent us Islam in order to help man recognize the legislature and recognize how to live with principle and not live based on your body and animal desires. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, Alam ta'lam anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Don't you recognize that the Lord Almighty is capable of knowing, one, who you are, what makes a stable society, what makes a stable human being, an individual, and what brings good to the society. So now you recognize if the Lord Almighty is capable of knowing all that, because what it takes to legislate, listen up, you guys, don't worry, she's just taking her baby to the bathroom. Focus on me.
Where's the bathroom at? I think you wanna know. Is there a bathroom?
There's no bathroom. Oh. What? The bathrooms are out of order.
I'm
Zamzam.
thinking about the neighbors that I next to. so that I
Okay.
can give them bathroom.
Hey, why not go to Godfather's Pizza?
Oh, yeah.
Oops.
And I have a question.
Can you see if the dentist has a bathroom?
I can get a key. Let me see.
Yeah, there's the dentist.
Oh, we can go.
Like
there.
Yes.
the family we will talk about, is it gonna be example of because you have friends, but you friends when you're in hospital or you wanna get back or you go through, they're not there, but when like they're hungry or like they looking for a house or like when you bought something in Africa, like oh my house is this, like they're gonna contact you like when they need it. Basically, there's one even they're gonna look my wallet like with not even permission. Like, or when you need them, then you can disappear.
Allah al-Musta'an. All right. So now let's continue. Now, the other basis, we mentioned that when it came to legislature, that there's one that you are capable of knowing why such a ruling was there. Two, you're able to decipher, at least the scholars are able to get to the backbone and the vertebra of why certain legislatures are there. And number three, there are certain legislatures that you really cannot know why such a legislature is there in the beginning. It can happen that you can get to the wisdom of it probably by going understanding science or maybe understanding different things to be able to probably understand the wisdom behind things. But not knowing the wisdom does not mean that there is no wisdom behind it. You were just able to recognize that the Lord Almighty, alam ta'lam anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Do not recognize that the Lord Almighty is capable of doing everything. Meaning what? Meaning that he knows what is beyond time, what is beyond place, what is beyond the creation, what is beyond the society, and what is good for them in order to maintain different things. Why maintain different things? Well, here's one thing. Zainab, how old are you? 40? That's not bad. All right. Now, when you look at Zainab, what Zainab wanted to do in her 20s, and she would have might thought that that was the right thing that she wanted so badly for her life. At age 40, she recognized that good thing I didn't get it. Was that right, Zainab? So many different things. But here's one thing. What if at 20, she didn't recognize it? Let's give an example. Was it Samia? Samia. How old are you, Samia? 14. Samia's only 14. Samia, when you were 8 years old, were there things that you wanted so bad that at age 14, you're like, good thing I didn't get it? Yes, there you go. So that's the same thing. When you look at so many different stages in your life, in order for you to recognize whether something is good or bad for you, you need to see what is going to happen if I were to do this and be consistent with living and taking and making that decision. What's going to happen to me 10 or 15 years from now? That is wisdom. Wisdom is being capable of looking at the consequence of making any decision farther than the limit of your time now. When you're looking at making that decision and the consequence 5 years from now, if you're capable of looking at 5 years from now, well, that's really good. But the older you get, you would have for sure encountered more and more and more examples of different people. It's just called empirical. What does that mean? I'm seeing example number one. I saw Saad trying to take that path, and I saw Jibreel, and I saw Zamzam, and I saw Fuad, and I saw more than 20 people try to take that route, and it was not a happy ending. So when I see person 21 wanting to make that decision, what am I going to say? I've seen so many people make that decision. It wasn't a happy ending. Then therefore, with time, you were capable of recognizing the decision making and the different types of decision makings, and you're able to recognize by far, without taking that path, where this is leading me. So I better be smart, and I better be wise, and I better not make my urge be the decision maker and the emotions be the decision maker, but that observation of how I saw people making those decisions and what it led them to. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. When I don't become others' example, but I learn from others' mistakes. Right? I learn from others' mistakes, so that's why that person would have insight. Why did they have insight? Well, they had insight because they were capable of looking and having deep insight, deep sighting, deep observation, and looking at the decisions and making the decisions and trying to make the right decision regardless of what urge you might have on the inside. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, your Lord Almighty, what about him? Well, he owns the heavens and the earth. If he owns the heavens and the earth, then therefore he controls the timing. He controls the making of something. In other words, he controls the place. If he controls the place, then he controls the different dimensions that control the place. Right? What does that mean? The skies, the universe, all right? What controls the universe? The universe, you might look at it as place, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you the universe is also time, because the rotation, that rotation that those different things in space do are actually time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, well, if he controls their existence, then he controls time. Then he controls time. What do you need to understand if something is good for you or not good for you? You need to understand space, place, and time. If you know place and time and you control their functionality, the function, then you go beyond anyone and anything in knowing what is good for them. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Doesn't the one that created actually know everything that is good for the creatures? And he is al-Latif al-Khabir. He's the most subtle. What is al-Latif? What's going on over there? Oh, what is al-Latif? Al-Latif is what is subtle. What is subtle? Now here's one thing.
Subtle is hidden.
Subtle and is hidden. Now, when you're actually sitting, for example, you're sitting down, and as you are sitting down, you guys are taking breaths and you're exhaling, inhaling. You probably exhaled and inhaled just within this hour. Who knows how many times? Did you feel anything?
No.
You didn't. Guess when you would feel it? When you have to be on those ventilators and you could feel, and then you could feel and hear those ventilators and they are so loud and you're trying to take those deep breaths. That's when you will feel it. And that's when, hopefully we never have to. Hopefully we never have to. Those canisters that they carry for the oxygen, they would carry them everywhere, and just by carrying them, and they would be, by just that canister replacing one canister to another, they would be trying to grasp for air. and you could hear them trying, getting so sweaty because they need to grasp for air. You know it. Try, yep, you see it every day. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, He's al-Latif. He's so subtle. His power is so subtle that you cannot even sense His power running within you. You don't even sense it. That His greatness is so subtle that your ability to live is so subtle, you don't even recognize it in your life, in your breath, and in every single second that you actually live. There's something subtle in you controlling your existence. That's subtle. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Why al-Khabir? Because He's capable of putting the different dimensions together. The dimension of time, place, and what makes the time and place the purpose you're heading to. Are you with me, friend Rashid? MashaAllah, I can see you're starting to grow a beard soon, man. What do you guys think? He's getting bigger. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. All right. What?
He's 13.
He's 13. He's getting bigger. Khalas, that's it. He's becoming a man.
Yes.
Soon I'm going to be wearing a niqab in front of him.
I know. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Allah yahmik ya Rabbi. Am turidun. He gave me the look. It's like, are you serious? La ilaha illallah. Allah yahfadhu ya Rabbi.
You knew me since I was a diaper.
What?
He's like, you knew me since I was a diaper.
I know. La ilaha illallah. You know, speaking of that, just on a side, okay? There was one of the Sahaba, all right? His name is Usama ibn Zayd, all right? Usama ibn Zayd, you guys look at this. Usama ibn Zayd was actually the Prophet the Prophet's adopted son's son. It was like a grandson. All right. Now, because the ayah was revealed, the Prophet was not allowed to call Zayd as his son. He wasn't allowed to do that, but he was always used to doing that. The Prophet, how did Zayd even come into the Prophet's home? All right, so Zayd was actually given as a gift. Zayd was kidnapped, all right? Zayd was kidnapped by people that were waging a battle on Zayd's maternal family's tribe. They see Zayd, kidnap him, take him, and sell him. The Prophet's wife, Khadija, her cousin or uncle, actually buys Zayd in the market. And he goes and gives Zayd to Khadija, which is the Prophet's wife, as a gift. Hey, I got you a slave boy. The Prophet couldn't handle seeing Zayd as a slave with him, so he frees him and adopts him as his own son. Later, Zayd, his family, they basically were so happy. Hey, we heard that Zayd was found. So they go to Zayd and tell him to come back home. But Zayd, the Prophet ﷺ told him, I don't want to give up on you, but if you choose to go back home and go with your family, go ahead and go. But Zayd insisted that he wanted to stay with the Prophet ﷺ. So he stays with the Prophet ﷺ, later becomes Muslim. Then the ayah says that no manipulation is permissible, even in adoption. No matter what narrative you put for it, the narrative does not change the facts. You cannot claim that he is your son when he's not. Manipulation does not change the matters of truth. Narratives don't change truth. Narratives cannot be but a word of truth. call him Zayd ibn Haritha, Zayd the son of Haritha. That is his real father's name. So call him Zayd ibn Haritha, not Zayd the son of Muhammad. Don't manipulate, even if the narrative sounded very affectionate. Even if it sounded very affectionate. Now, later Zayd gets married to Ayman. Ayman is originally a combination of Ethiopian, Yemeni. All right. Ayman. She was what?
I don't know, she raised them, she had
She did. So later she gets married to Zayd ibn Haritha. She gets a son. His name was Usama. Usama was always there. Usama was grown up in their home. Aisha was always playing with his hair and all that. You know, she liked his African hair, I guess. Was always playing with his hair and all that. And then Usama one day comes to the Prophet ﷺ and explained something that happened, that he recognized, something different that didn't used to happen when he was younger. So the Prophet ﷺ tells him and explains to him that that indicates that he had become a man, that he just reached puberty. Usama started crying because what does that mean? He said, you cannot enter the women, my wives' homes anymore like you used to because you're a man now. Sayyidah Aisha started crying. They all started crying. Usama started crying. But truth is truth. It doesn't change things. Not because of how you feel about something. It doesn't change the truth of it. So here, when you look at these ayat, it's just to help us understand how we find and how we feel towards legislature. What was that?
I was telling him soon he's gonna go there. When you come and tell us, he has to put in the
That's a threat, girl. You're soon gonna go to the masjid, the men's masjid. You hear that?
He's been asking, you know, he's like, am I allowed to come here?
You are. You're still young, bro. Don't worry about it.
You don't have to like it. You just say
You're
that.
still young. You're still young. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. You're fine. You're fine. All right. So, what was that?
I said, not the hair, but yeah.
Inshallah. All right, let's continue. So now we understand the vertebra for Sharia, the vertebra for Islamic legislature, and how it's all based on preserving one, the social justice, economical justice, and of course, justice in general is actually based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not my vision, not your drive, and not all the different philosophers of ethics and all those different philosophies, because they lack the ability to know the different natures that we're created in. They lack the ability and they lack the information to know the purpose of life, because purpose preceded our existence. So if they don't know, so can't our mind actually think about the purpose and head it that way? Your purpose preceded your existence. Your purpose came before your existence, and your existence, your own mind, is only trying and is only capable of understanding the different things in your existence. In other words, your mind is capable of studying the table, the chair, the world, the different things and how they function, but your mind is not designed to study the different things that are created and or even that is beyond creation. Are you with me, Abdullah? He really got lost on that one. Oh, he got shy. That is beyond creation. All right, so let's continue. وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. Without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is legislature supposed to be all about? Legislature is all about giving you the different advantages in life. In other words, Sharia is not about making things harder, but it's all about making things easier for you. Are you with me, Sad?
Yes.
All right, put the chair back, bro.
Making it easier for us.
Sharia is all about making it easy for you and not harder for you. So don't think that, oh, because this is haram, oh, this is boring, why can't it be halal? It's actually to make things easier for you. It's actually to make things happier for you. And that's why the whole Sharia is there. So why did it change within the time frame of the Prophet ﷺ? Why were there certain rulings that changed during the time of the Prophet ﷺ? One, there was a gradual process when Islam was revealed. It took 23 years to get completely revealed. 23 years means 12 months and almost 12 years, sorry. 12 years and almost 9 months, 9 months in Mecca, and then in Medina, 11 years, 11 years. The Prophet ﷺ died in 11-year hijrah. Let's note that down so you guys will never forget it. Ready? Let's note it down. So, what? Okay, so let's do it. So Islam in Mecca was for 12 years and almost 9 months. All right. And so that was in Mecca. That was in Mecca. In Medina, it was for 11 years. All right. So that makes it in a total of, what's the total? 23 years total. All right. Took 23 years. And during these times, not everything in Islam was revealed all together. It came in bits, little by little, and changes. And then it was training the Sahaba on how to live different things. Let's look at another example. When the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba that they were not allowed to visit the graves. Well, why were they not allowed to visit the graves? It was connecting them with their ancestry. It was telling them that they couldn't visit graves because at the time, they, the voodoo people, voodoo things, they used to worship the dead, and they would connect with a number of different things with the dead and all these different things. So Islam wanted them, well, wait a minute, you really need a time where you could think outside of the box of connecting yourself with the dead. You needed a time of training where you would connect yourself with a different legislature, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disconnected first the Muslims, the Sahaba, from visiting the dead and even visiting graveyards. And it isn't until later that once they had that moment of training, that's when the Prophet ﷺ actually said, I had ordered you before not to visit the graves. Now visit the graves. Training time is over. In other words, he didn't say that literally, but training time was over. In order, why should we visit the graves? He said, visit it. It reminds you of the judgment day. It reminds you of your purpose, that your purpose is not this life, but your purpose is actually the akhirah. Now let's go back to those different ayats. So hopefully we can finish the tafsir right there. أم تريدون أن تسألوا رسولكم كما سئل موسى من قبل? Or do you want to ask your prophet just like what Prophet Musa was asked before? What was he asked before? So Prophet Musa alayhi salam, the Bani Israel, they went and asked Prophet Musa alayhi salam, hey, can you make us and let us see Allah Almighty? And they knew that they couldn't actually see Allah, but they just wanted, they couldn't, why couldn't they see Allah? So why was that even a bad question to ask? Go ahead, why can't they see Allah? Because he's too bright. Okay. So how do you know that Allah exists?
Because of the created us.
Looking at the creation, look at the different patterns, all these different things. In other words, looking at the open book. What is the open book?
They couldn't even believe the food that they were given.
Yeah.
What is
The
Bible
open
all
book
about?
is basically what you see in nature.
In nature.
The eye.
What you see in nature is the open book. That is reflecting an Almighty that is the one that puts everything in a specific place. The Lord Almighty that is that is subtle, that has the power to give you when you don't even feel it. The merciful, the one that is giving you the rizq al-razzaq, the one that's given you all the different provisions that you have, the one that is all powerful, the one that is the creator. You're all seeing all these different things in the world around you, and then you're recognizing that it is impossible that this world was founded on its own, but it was created by an almighty creator. So therefore, as human beings, you have limited ability to see the world. You have a limited ability to create. You have a limited ability to do different things and function in different ways. In fact, your weakness cannot even see and look at the brightness of the sun. The Lord Almighty told us that your Lord Almighty, you can see his magnificence just by looking around you, and in fact, looking on the inside of you. How was your body even created with all the different organs and all the different complexities within your body? Your Lord Almighty created all these different complexities. Then your Lord Almighty is far beyond your capabilities, is far beyond your powers. Now, here's one thing, is that the Lord Almighty, we cannot see the Lord Almighty because the Lord Almighty is too magnificent for us to comprehend. For us to comprehend, too magnificent. Now, the Bani Israel,
There are ayats that were talking about the same thing in front, like a few classes behind.
yes, absolutely. We're still on the same subject. But because when it comes to tafsir, there's certain intricate details, we try to go inside, even though we only passed 16 pages.
You talked about this just a few pages ago.
Absolutely. It's trying to get you into recognizing the whole argument from different corners. It doesn't give you just one answer to one misconception. It gives you so many different answers in order to make it a clear foundation for that particular question. So it might answer it based on history. It might answer it based on future. It might answer it because that concept is extremely important. It's a foundation. And because it's a foundation, it does not leave one corner for any part of your idea to go off track with that. So it will answer it for you in many different corners. It'll tell you, let me answer that one from this side, that side, because I need you to understand that is a fact. Because if that pillar is broken, then another pillar is going to be coming down with it. Whenever you have a building, you need to make sure that the different foundations are solid. All right. So, أم تريدون أن تسألوا رسولكم كما سئل موسى من قبل. What did they ask? In Surah An-Nisa, يسألك أهل الكتاب أن تنزل عليهم كتابا من السماء فقد سألوا موسى أكبر من ذلك فقالوا أرنا الله جهرة فأخذتهم الصاعقة بظلمهم. Bani Israel, they had asked that they wanted to see Allah Almighty. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us they wanted to see Allah, and Allah, even in the Old Testament, tells us that because they knew that their bodies, they were told before that their bodies are not capable of seeing Allah, but they wanted the impossible, not because they were looking for faith, but they were looking to do what we would call stalking. They wanted to just ask for something that is impossible because they did not want to believe. They wanted to pretend that they were looking for an answer. They were stalking. They were trying to procrastinate in any way by putting in all these different claims, even though they knew that that's not seeking it. It's kind of like a child. Mom says, I want you to eat your vegetables. And what does he say? He'll say, I'll eat my vegetable. But Mom, what happens to, and then they'll ask questions that really don't even have answers. They're like, just eat your vegetables.
question.
Go ahead.
And you know, like 2 weeks ago, I went to like Somali mom, so I met not Muslims. So like for me, it's like when I see them, I say, "Oh, welcome," because just feel like comfortable. So one of the girl like, "Oh, like I have a question for you." She's like, we students like there were like 15 of them walking in. Like, oh, okay. And I said, like me, I only know the basic, but I don't like if you have a question or argue with the religion, there's imams. So contact them and because they allowed me to, like the imam said, whoever that have a question. So she said, oh, like Jesus. And I said, we believe Jesus, but he's a prophet. He's called Prophet Isa. We love him the way we love Prophet Muhammad. So she's like, oh, actually, like, did you believe like Muslim is correct and the Christian is like, I said, of course I believe because I born in Muslim and I'm gonna die in Muslim and no one gonna make me to go anywhere. Like even if you give me $1 billion, I know my religion. So she's like, oh, is that what you believe in? She's like, oh, Jesus loves you. Like I feel like you have a devil. I say, I don't even know what devil is, but like, because we have Quran, like those devil you're talking about, we kill them with the
Okay.
and then she's like,
There
okay,
reminds me.
she's like a Christian, and then before a long time ago, Muslim it wasn't even exist. So how the Muslim just came after? I said, I already told you we have Imam because if I go detail to detail, so it's like, oh, I don't need to do because you tried to make me Muslim. I'm like, you asked me a question and I said, I'm not going to choose. Not even my mom can't make me.
I don't know why Allah yarhamu, I just reminded it just reminded me of my uncle. I think I told you guys when an atheist tells him you're gonna go to hell.
No, I feel like
I think I told you guys this story. So my uncle is a very, very simple man, really simple man. He only, I think, went to 4th grade or something. Really simple man. So I told him, like, Khali, I mean, you really, the da'wah has different methods. And an atheist guy, he had a store. So he was a really, really successful businessman. An atheist guy comes in and he says, Bob, you're going to go to hell. He said, Z, I don't even believe in hell. He said, that's why you're going to hell. I'm like, Khali, uncle, that's not how you do da'wah. That he was like, I'm just saying the truth. That's not how you tell people about Islam. And he had these speakers some while back. The Quran, he would turn it on like blasting Quran in the streets. I'm like, why are you doing that? He's like, I'm doing my share of da'wah. I'm like,
It's so beautiful though.
I'm not sure I agree with this method of da'wah.
back then,
It's not a method of da'wah. It's actually, it's not a method of da'wah. It's just,
But now people are so weak in Islam these days that sometimes I kind of push that Bedouin style because to just tell you I don't care about you, but me, I'm dying here.
all right, let's continue. أم تريدون أن تسألوا رسولكم كما سئل موسى من قبل? Or do you want to ask your prophet what Prophet Musa alayhi salam was asked before? Notice that it didn't say, or do you want to ask your prophet and become like the Yahud? But that's what it was insinuating. But it didn't want the Muslimin to be equated at all with that, and just said, do you want to ask your prophet what Prophet Musa was asked before? In other words, they were seeking what was the story really all about. Well, the Prophet ﷺ was telling us of was telling the Muslimin, really was the khitab, the discourse was really going and directed at the Muslims, even though it was really the Yahud that were asking the Prophet ﷺ and trying to stalk in terms of the message. They didn't want to break, they didn't want an argument that was direct, and they didn't want an argument that was giving them, or an answer that was answering their questions and their misconceptions. So that's why the ayah just directed at the Prophet, the Sahaba, directed at the Prophet's companions and telling them, well, now that you recognized how the Jews were stalking and the Bani Israel and the children of Israel were stalking with their questions for the sake of not wanting to believe, but for the sake of trying to keep away from faith. They were stalking, so don't do the same. What was it wanting to say? وَمَن يَتَبَدَّلِ الْكُفْرَ بِالْإِيمَانِ. If you replace, and instead of seeking faith, you're seeking a delusion, you're seeking disbelief, then فَقَدْ ضَلَّ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. Then in reality, you had really been off the right path, because the path is really clear. There's no ambiguity in it. It's so clear. You don't have to draw any confusion or confuse the different paths. There's no ambiguity. It's clear. But the second that you try to get yourself away from the path, that's when you start drawing an off line. In the beginning, it may seem you're still on track, but without you realizing, you have gone farther and farther and farther away. When does this actually happen? When people follow narrative over the truth of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent. Narrative is the biggest delusion because it carries with it a lot of manipulation. It carries with it a lot of manipulation. Take, for example, in our time today, there's the narrative of love, narrative of wanting to play freedom, when in reality, you're just manipulating yourself by putting in those pronouns that don't belong to you. You're creating a manipulation. It may make you feel happy, but your happiness is going to come back at you, because you're going to live in discrepancies, in these confusions. You as a human being, you have to live the truth. But when you create a lie, you're going to create another lie to hide the previous lie. And if you're going to live your life with a lie after a lie after a lie, under the name of narrative, or under the pretense of making myself respectful, inclusivity, and then all the different names that you want to give it, tolerance, inclusivity, and respect, and all that, you're just creating one name after another for the same manipulation. Live truth. Live the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. It's clear. Don't create a lie and feel good about it. By creating a lie and feeling good about it, what did you just do? You just replaced, and you gave up on from faith, from clarity, and you chose kufr. You chose disbelief. And that's really important to mention, because disbelief is not only in how you relate with God or how you understand God, but it also includes in how you live the ethics and the morality. So disbelief is also within manipulation of how you live your life. And that's why if you look at the previous prophets, not all of them were necessarily only speaking about the concept of God and who created you and all these different things. Some of the prophets, the focus was really on morality, in where, look at Prophet Lut alayhi salam. When Prophet Lut alayhi salam was talking about what they were doing, all right, and Prophet Shu'aib was talking to them about let's call it the economical, or the different injustices that they were doing in terms of their transactions and financial injustices. The Quran was actually emphasizing that even that injustice is a form of kufr. That injustice, being a form of kufr, being a form of disbelief, is on the same level of the kufr that idolatry was being practiced, in where they, instead of believing in God, believing in the idols. All right. Now here, The ayah, وَمَن يَتَبَدِّلِ الْكُفْرَ بِالْإِيمَانِ, whoever exchanges instead of faith, they would take in kufr, then they had then ruled on themselves, then they just laid out, then they just فَقَدْ ضَلَّ سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ, then they had gone astray, away from the right path. Then they're the ones that determined that path. They're the ones that took that path. وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ إيمانكم كفارا حسدا من عند أنفسهم من بعد ما تبين لهم الحق. There's a story to this. The Muslims were defeated in the second battle. The first battle, let's take a little chart right there. In the first battle, the Muslims, the first battle was called Badr. That happened in the second year Hijrah, the second year when the Muslims actually migrated to Medina. Later, look at this, later in the third year Hijrah, well, the Muslims were victorious in this one. Then in the third year Hijrah, the disbelievers and the pagans, they were really angry. And what they wanted to do was retaliate for their defeat. The Muslims in this battle were only 315. 315. And in this one, they were only 700. But guess what? The amount, the number of the pagans were actually 3,000. They were 3,000 troops. There were 3,000 coming in. Muslims were defeated in that one. So the Bani Israel and the Jews were so happy and were living this, what is it called? That feeling of, happiness of now they're defeated. This is the end of them. So they would come to them and say, just give up on it. It's never going to be victorious. Come and join us. And it's better for you. You'll have a better future by living with us. All right. Let's just wait until it finishes that.
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So the people of Bani Israel, or at least Bani Qurayza and Bani Qaynuqa, they were major tribes there, 4 major Jewish tribes there, and even the pagans that were living in Medina, they started telling the Muslims, come on, just give up on them. We're telling you, this religion has no future. And what that means, you've got no future. Just give up on it. This is your first defeat. More defeats are going to come, and that's going to be the end of you.
I am practicing Islam.
All right. Now, here's what happened. They started, this ayah was saying, وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. Oh, many of those, the people of the book, and many of those that are actually watching and observing you. What do they want? They wish that they could just take you away from your faith. Kuffaran. They want you disbelievers. They don't want you to be part of Islam. Why? حَسَدًا مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ. There is this envy. When they see you holding on to your faith and a principle, there's this envy of seeing you so strong in what you believe in after they had recognized what the truth was. فَعْفُوا وَاصْفَحُوا. فَعْفُوا. Just forgive them. We'll deal with them later. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَعْفُوا. Just forgive them. Wasfahu, disregard and ignore what they're saying until the Lord Almighty's power takes its plan and gets in its order. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. The Lord Almighty is capable of doing everything. Now here's what happened. They were telling who that Islam was defeated. They were actually telling the least fortunate, at least in terms of wealth. Ammar bin Yasir, and they were telling the poorest of the Muslims that were already struggling financially. And what were the Bani Israel in Medina considered? Well, they were considered the capitalists. They were considered the people with the money. So the Yahud were telling them, you leave them, we'll give you something. You follow us, we'll get you some cash. We'll buy you. We'll get you some cash. Come on, follow us. Give up on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And guess what? I got you something prepared right here because I want you guys to see something. All right, you guys, this is real. Okay, I want you to look at this. All right, I'm going to put up this PowerPoint for you. Okay, you see right there. I'm going to put a couple PowerPoints. I want you guys to see this. This is not me. All right, I want you guys to see these PowerPoint. You see this organization right there? Right, look at this organization right there. So this is an organization. You could see it was actually founded in 1948. Right, it's has over 1,850 employees, and its annual, look at this, its annual budget is actually $263 million. Annual budget, $263 million. All right. This is one think tank. This is just one.
What do they do?
What do they do? These people, they just think, huh? Well, here it is. Let's see what they're thinking about. All right.
They just think.
They just think, I guess. They just sit there and think. What do these people think about? Well, these people actually write different researches. What is the research regarding? Well, it's regarding so many different things, but mainly regarding, look at this, mainly regarding foreign policy. What foreign policy? So they will actually have and decide, well, Ukraine, for example, all right, Ukraine, we need to control, for example, that area, and we need to figure out what's happening, how much are they doing, what is the country going through. But when it comes to the Muslim world, there's a lot more to do. Why? Because when we're talking about the Muslim world right now, we need to make sure that they don't become a future threat. So what should we do? So they basically, here's one of those books. It's called Civil Democratic Islam. All right. So what about this young lady? Young? Well, no, she's not that young anymore. All right. So this young lady, her name is Cheryl Bernard. She was like, well, we've got some strategy here. And this strategy, we need to make sure that we change the Muslims from practicing Islam to practicing a type of Islam that would actually work the way that we want the Muslim world to behave in.
So she's planting viruses.
Okay. So what does she do? Well, so she says, this approach seeks to strengthen and foster the development of civil democratic Islam and modernization and development. So is it? Well, let's see how she wants to do it. So she says, well, we need to support the modernists first. Although the word sounds like a very nice word, modernists. Why would you want to support the fundamentalists? Of course. The question is, who is a modernist? She would explain. I just didn't have the time to actually, it's a couple pages. It's actually, it's a lot to work on. All right. This was actually part of my my master's dissertation. All right. So what does she do? Well, what does she mean by a modernist? A modernist, she means, well, he has to basically live the liberal or the way that they wanted that type of Islam to be in order to consider it as an ally. So she says, by enhancing their vision of Islam. So wait a minute, Cheryl Bernard, you're somehow a major in Islam and you wanted to make sure that the Muslims were practicing Islam right. Oh, so is it? Okay, let's see. All right, so let's see what she says. Enhancing their vision of Islam over of that of the traditionalists. So is a traditionalist, a person that practices them in a certain way based on the tradition. Well, let's see. By providing them with a broad, flat platform to articulate and disseminate their views. So wait a minute, you're trying to make somebody's voice louder than the others. In other words, you're trying to enhance a certain interpretation, a certain vision, and you're putting in, well, let's see what they do. Support the secularists on case-by-case basis. Encourage secular civic and cultural institution programs. Okay. Finally, oppose the fundamentalists energetically by striking at vulnerabilities in their Islamic and ideological postures, exposing that. And of course, she continues. And then finally, oppose the fundamentalists. We got that one right there. And of course, she goes further. And of course, she's the one that determines who's a fundamentalist, who's the modernist, who we can work with, who's a traditionalist, and who's a bad Muslim, and who's a good Muslim. And if you practice your deen, you're a bad Muslim.
Yeah.
All right. And if you don't practice your deen and you take the secular view, then you're a good Muslim. We need to support you because you're actually better. Okay. So let's continue. Then what? Well, then help break the fundamentalist and traditionalist monopoly on defining, explaining, and interpreting Islam. You need to break them. All right. Make sure, well, how do you break them? Let's help break them in the following way. Help break them. Identify appropriate modernist scholars to manage a website that answers the questions related to daily conduct and offers modernist Islamic legal opinions. Let's give them a new fatwa.
My hat is good. Why do I need?
All right, hold on. Exactly. Encourage modernist scholars to write textbooks and develop curricula. All right, let's see. Publish introductory books at subsidized rates. Make them as available as the fundamentalist authors. Use popular regional media such as radio to introduce the thoughts and practices of modernist Muslims to broaden the international view of what Islam means and can mean.
We shouldn't allow such things.
Well, here's the thing, is that what I'm trying to say here is that there is an agenda. You know, if you are supposed to be a think tank, what is that of your business to change a religion
That you don't practice.
that you don't practice? It's none of your business. You know, it's not your specialty to say what religion says. It's not your specialty to actually interpret somebody else's religion for them. But you can see how the agenda, the reason why I got it here was really because the ayah was telling us, وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُمْ. If we're not aware of these types of agendas that are actually at stake, then we could be, without us realizing, consumers of these agendas. Consumers. This is somebody that is actually putting an agenda. Oh, we're going. And by the way, she does actually go further. I just don't have the time to actually look at each and every single one of them. So what does she do? She basically says, well, we need to actually bring in a new interpretation for hadith. All right. So it can be defended. So here, civil society and democracy can be defended on the grounds of hadith. So she's like, we can find the text that supports this interpretation that we want prevalent in order to propose our ideas. She goes further. You're like, what are you doing in somebody else's faith? Trying to. What is this? What is this? You have nothing to do. This is just a scheme. This is a scheme. And then guess what? And then she says, well, we need to go. And it sure happened. We need to go to the different Muslim countries and change their school curriculums. And they sure did. Fund the school curriculum. Well, not only that, but change the school curriculums relating to the religion, especially the religion, and put in a new interpretation and expose. You'll see it later on. I'll let you guys pray and we'll continue, inshallah.
Remember Judea in Surah Al-Maryam?
Uh-huh.
Allah will call their leaders. Remember how he taught us?
You'll see it.
Judea.
Just like, if I do like this, which one's correct?
Both.
What?
Yeah.
I thought like, what am I doing?
You mean this one? Just giving that nod?
I thought I let.
Oh, you can do Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That's okay. Yeah, no problem.
Don't be busy doing like this. Like,
Well, you don't want to keep on doing that. All right, let's continue, guys. So let's look at the strategy part. Yeah, we're still speaking about the ayat. Let's look at first the ayat so we can connect with it. وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. So this is talking about how many of Ahl al-Kitab, many of the people of the book were, or their main intention or agenda is in order to steer you away or get you away from the deen itself, from your faith. And I was basically exposing something within our times because I don't want to just speak about the past. We talked about the Sahaba. I want to just show you some of the things today. Let's see the strategy in depth, okay? So you guys, wallahi, this is not me. This is, I know. Let's see the strategy. Why step on somebody else's toes? What do you have to do with this? Seriously, let's see. Let's see the strategy. Build up a modernist leadership. Who's going to decide the modernist? Her. Okay, create role models and leaders. Modernists who risk persecution should be built up as courageous civil rights leaders, which indeed they are. There are precedents showing that this can work. Nawal al-Saadawi, who's actually an atheist ex-Muslim, achieved international renown for enduring persecution, harassment, attempts, and
So is this Islamic or
this is Rand. It's a think tank that we just talked about. There are so many different think tanks. All right. This is one of the think tanks and what they had proposed for the Department of State and even for different personnels within the government on how they should deal and work with the Muslim world. All right. This is basically an agenda. All right. Let's see. And what else should they do? Let's continue. What else? Include modern mainstream Muslims in political outreach events to reflect the demographic reality. In other words, put in someone else. Support civil society in the Islamic world. Of course, when she talks about supporting civil, what was that? This is it. Hold on. This is particularly important in situations of crisis, refugee situations, and etc. So, what are you doing on the rural and neighborhood levels, as well as civic associations? Okay, infrastructure. Let's continue right there. And of course, they were basically, putting in the develop Western Islam, German Islam, U.S. Islam. Where's Saad? Where's Zamzam?
She's helping the system.
Okay, so develop Western Islam, German Islam, etc. This requires gaining a better understanding of the composition. I have no idea. I was like, okay, hold on. This requires getting a better understanding of the composition as well as the evolving practice and thought in these communities. Assist in eliciting, expressing, and codifying their views. Whatever happened to respecting people's spaces?
Oh, no, not when it comes to this.
Exactly. Exactly. Go on the offensive against fundamentalists.
Right.
Can you believe what you're reading?
No, having a hard time.
This is real. Let's see. Delegitimize individuals and positions associated with extremist Islam. And of course, what they mean by extremists, this is not talking about ISIS.
Yeah.
This is not talking about ISIS. This is talking about anyone. This is not, and she'll tell you, she will explain. I just didn't have, I don't have the time to actually explore and pinpoint each and what she meant by the extremist Islam is anybody that practices Islam by the book, basically.
Right.
Anybody that chooses to practice Islam by the book, they considered hijab, for example, as obligatory. Salah, you got to pray it on time. Islam and ethics were to be interpreted based on Islam. Well, this is an extremist Muslim. So this is not talking about somebody that is anyhow going violent or somehow, ISIS. This is not talking about that. All right. So let's continue. Encourage Arab journalists and popular media to investigate reporting on the lives and personal habits and corruption of fundamentalist leaders. All right. Publicize incidents that highlight their brutality. what it, if you're able to find anything, just, highlight a brutal thing about their past and highlight it as if it is, the reality of what they are. Such as the recent deaths of Saudi schoolgirls in fire when religious police physically prevented Saudi fighters, etc. And then expose the role of charitable organization in financing terror and extremism has begun to be more clearly understood, etc. I'm just like, what do you... Build up the stature of Sufism, encourage countries with strong Sufi traditions to focus on the part of their history and to include it in their school curricula. Pay more attention to Sufi Islam. What are you doing speaking in that language? Hold on. Let's see, focus on education and youth. All right, hold on. Focus on education and youth. Committed adult adherents of radical Islamic movements are unlikely to be easily influenced into changing their views. So what should we do? The next generation, however, can conceivably be influenced if the message of democratic Islam can be inserted in the school curricula and public media.
I gotta read more about this.
This is unbelievable. Hold on. And then what should we do? Radical fundamentals have established massive efforts to gain influence over education and are unlikely to give up established footholds without a struggle. An equally energetic effort will be required to wrest this pain from them.
Democratic Islam is what it's called.
Hold on. Okay, specific activities to support this. Let's see. So publishing and distributing their works. Whose works? The works of the civil, the modernists and mainstream seculars. Okay, what are you going to do? Publishing and distribute their works. Encourage them to write for mass audience and the youth. In other words, fund them. Introducing their views into the curriculum of Islamic education. I thought, wait a minute, what do you have to do with Islamic education? Giving them a public platform. Hold on. Give them a public platform, making their opinions and judgments on fundamental questions of religious interpretation available to a mass audience in competition with those of the fundamentalists and traditionalists. And what she means by fundamentalists and traditionalists, we just talked about it. All right, who already have websites, publishing houses, school institutions, and of course, positioning modernists as the counterculture option for disaffected Islamic youth, facilitating and encouraging awareness of pre- and non-Islamic history and culture in the media and the curricula of relevant countries. So what are they doing? Are you with me on Zamzam?
I'm shocked because
this is real. Hold on. Hold on. Just focus with me here. So what should we do, or what should they do? They're like, instead of making them focus on learning Islamic history, let's instead let them learn about the pre and the non-Islamic history and culture. All right. Encourage and supporting secular, civic, and culture institutions and programs. I don't understand what kind of a...
This is so obvious to me.
This is too obvious. Why would you, it's, I can't believe it. Let's see, targeting these messages to young people, to pious traditionalist populations, to Muslim minorities, avoiding showing respect or admiration for the violent feats of fundamental extremists and terrorists. And of course, what you mean, and this is not talking about ISIS. ISIS, I totally agree with, exposing their actions. And this is talking, she would mention, like, what I mean by a fundamentalist is somebody that views that the Quran and Sunnah are basically the things to go back to. Let's see, encouraging the corruption, hypocrisy, and all these different things. What? No, seriously, that's exactly how I feel. This is exactly how I feel. Are you serious? Why are you stepping on other people's toes? Why are you stepping on people's toes? And of course, she does actually go in detail, more details. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the tip, okay? This is just the tip. It's like, go change the curriculum, and talks about changing in reducing and pressuring the governments to reduce the language, to reduce Quranic studies, Islamic studies, all these different things, and even change the concept and putting an interpretation. And you're wondering, like, what? What do you have to do with this? What? Why? I don't know how you guys feel about it. I was just capable of putting that guy with that.
That's crazy. I gotta go. There's no
All
bathroom
right.
here.
So we'll actually, inshallah, continue. Wait. Just one last word, Saad. So what is the solution? Aqimu salata wa atu zakah. We'll continue it next week. Hold on to your deen. We'll continue it next week, inshallah.
After seeing that, subhanAllah,
I have
big agenda.
that.
Yep. So we'll continue next week, inshallah. And hopefully, inshallah, it will be beneficial, inshallah. I was really hoping to finish until 112, but it's already 8 o'clock. You guys have been extremely patient, almost 3 hours now. And
Without a bathroom, it's killing me.
yeah, I know. Out of the bathroom, it's her fault.
Yeah.
Allah barik fi.
We're building new
It
bathrooms.
doesn't make sense though. They should have did like the women's first, the
Right,
men
and then the
first.
men's first.
Yeah, that's
That's
not
good
like-
feedback. Hadar Allah.
Yeah, at least one. When there's kids, it's impossible. You know what you should do, Saad? Go to the Godfather's Pizza.
I'm too scared to go. and clean,
No,
like,
no,
I'm
they're
gonna go
really nice
directly
people.
to her.
No. It's okay. They're really nice people.
They're really nice
Yeah,
people,
yeah. Yeah, just
Even
go.
the other lady said that. I don't know how to console her. She almost.
Where did she go?
She said, I can't go here. I don't understand security. And I said, well,
Where did she go?
I just did this.
Well, Saad, it's a long ways. If you guys don't want to, go to my house
Just go here.
and take your children to go to my house.
Allah, it's
All right.
making
Well,
me-
assalamu alaikum, everyone, and we'll see you all next week, inshallah.